of Jesus. Oh Lord, that at the end of the day, oh Lord, every values that will be given will be one that will move each and every organization forward in the name of Jesus. Oh Lord, we pray for all the guests in the name of Jesus that they will get to hear safe and sound in the name of Jesus. Oh Lord, at the end of the day, let us all have the cause to glorify God in the name of Jesus. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, thank you a lot to us. Please let's put our hands together for him now. Okay, we move straight into business. Coming up next for the opening remark, MD CEO Access Bank PLC, represented by Iyabo Soji-Okosoya, the head corporate banking Access Bank Group. Let's put our hands together for Iyabo Soji-Okosoya for the opening remarks. Let's keep clapping. Let's keep clapping.
Thank you, everyone, this morning. It's my pleasure to represent Mr. Roosevelt Ogbonan, who is unavoidably absent because he's out of the country today. But he brings his good tidings to everyone who is present at this event. I welcome all participants today for the event, the Non-Oil Export, the New Frontier. I welcome the Governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, represented by Director of Trade and Exchange, Dr. Mrs. Ozuemena Naji. I welcome the Controller General Nigerian Customs Service, Colonel Ahmed Ibrahim Ali, retired. I welcome the Executive Director and CEO, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Barrister Dr. Ezra Yakusak. The Head Centralized Business of Nexim, Mr. Mohammed Awanin. Group Managing Director, NISAT Limited, Ms. Annabelle Kamuche. Distinguished speakers at this event are notable guests from all over the country, as well as those who are privileged to be joining us online. We thank the good Lord that the COVID-19 has made us understand that we can do business on and offline. So that's something to cheer about. Before COVID, I'm sure it will have been extremely difficult to have this type of function and get people to join online. In view of the recent developments in the Nigerian economy and the world at large, which has precipitated foreign exchange liquidity squeeze, it has become exigent for Nigeria to diversify her source of foreign exchange earnings to meet increasing demand across board. As part of concerted efforts to redress this situation, the Central Bank of Nigeria recently introduced the Race to $200 billion program, which is famously known as the RT200. This is geared towards ensuring that we have sufficient FX to meet the requirements in Nigeria, and this notable export drive has been ably supported by the Nigerian Customs Service in terms of ensuring that we have opportunities for people to export their goods out of Nigeria without any stress. With the abundant natural and agricultural resource, this laudable program will support imports, help improve our balance of trade, and reverse the full dependency on FX on the Central Bank of Nigeria. Access Bank, as a significant player in the trade sector, has taken it upon herself to create a platform for all stakeholders to interact, share ideas, discuss their concerns, and chart new ways that promote and engender export business and structures in Nigeria. We promise to make this event insightful and engaging across the strata of the export business, not only as a program, but also to ensure that we continue to push the drive to significantly contribute to foreign exchange earnings and the growth of Nigeria's GDP. I thank you and welcome you to the forum, and trust that you'll have a splendid day. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. CBN Trade and Exchange, represented by Richard Mackay. Please, let's put our hands together for him. Richard Mackay, let's put our hands together as he makes his way.
morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's always very, very interesting and nice to be part of this forum. I was around just before COVID started. First and foremost, I want to extend the director's apology. She might be online. I don't know if she's there. She's currently in the United States on a program. Who has control of the system? Can you check if she's joined us? Because she's really meant to be taking this. I'm meant to be just standing in for her. Okay, so we're here today to talk about, the director is meant to talk about the non-oil export, the new frontier. Sorry, I think I'll just get my computer so that I don't have to be looking back. Okay, so I'll start with just a little quote. It's called the Dutch disease. It says, easy riches lead to sloth. And then men of fat and fatter soil are most commonly cowards, whereas a barren country make men temperate by necessity and by consequence careful, vigilant, and industrious. That's a quote by Jean Bodin in 1962. So we'll start by defining what a mono economy is. A mono economy refers to an economy which is mainly dependent on a single product or resource for its economic growth and development, product for sales or exports for its budget funding, especially to the tune of 70%. So, why we must diversify? We shouldn't just stay. The definition I just put here shows that Nigeria is a mono economy, and there are implications of being a mono economy. So, the disadvantages of being a mono economy could include it creates an unstable economy, an increase or decrease in the single product that we say we are export or we export in will affect our budgeting, will affect our decision making, will affect our policies, will affect everything that we do because we rely on just a single product. If we had diversified, a change in price, no Access Bank, madam, you can testify the request for PTA, for school fees, for medicals, and these requests are not met. So, depending on just one product for the source of for FX has put so much strain on our FX supply. It also weakens local production. If you are very import dependent, then you always continue to constrain yourself on importing everything because you don't have anything to export. So local companies will not be able to produce. So let's talk about the Nigerian economy. The Nigerian economy, we know oil and gas accounts for 90% of our export income. This statistic was gotten from the Nigeria as a country depends on 85% on oil for its revenue, for funding the budget. 85% of the funding for budget is coming from oil. So what happens if the oil stops? What happens if the world suddenly says they don't want oil? We know exactly what is happening in the developed economies today. There are targets already in the United Kingdom that by 2030, they're going on electric cars. What happens to our oil? We'll be left with our oil to, I don't know, maybe we'll start eating them. That Nigeria was a mainly agrarian economy. Even though 80% of our land is arable, only 40% of it was cultivated. And what do we do with this cultivation? Very, very basic. You hear people getting hectares and hectares of land that they were going to cultivate. And all they do is the raw product just to export. Raw product to export. You see someone producing so much cocoa beans, they don't add any value to it. All they do is just to export the cocoa beans. This is just a snapshot of the sectors of the economy. Our exports in Q1 of 2022. You can see here that almost 90% is oil. Crude oil in its normal form is 79%, and while other petroleum products account for 10%. Then closely followed by, firstly, for us to step up our exports from Nigeria, because we depend 90% on petroleum, 90% on petroleum. What happens to this sector if anything happens? If anything happens negative to this sector, it means we're down as an economy. That is why we always have to talk. We are talking the talk on diversifying the economy into the non-oil exports. Okay, so what are the products? I said prior to 1975, Nigeria was very, very agrarian before we discovered oil and we started tips. The Q1 of the products, agricultural products exported from Nigeria, shows that 72%, next slide, 72% cocoa beans and 52 we exported 72 billion naira in exports. Sesame seeds. It consists of sesame and all the products in that line. So you can imagine if we have ramped up our production of any of these products. These are products that Nigeria has a competitive advantage because of the arable land that we have. We can step up on this and diversify into agricultural production. But not just to send this out. We need to add value. We cannot just produce the cocoa and send them out in their raw form. So who are the 10 top trading partners of Nigeria? When I went through this, I was very surprised that I didn't see China. Well, I've expected that one of our toppest trading partners was China, but the statistics shows that our top trading partner is India. But guess what? Again, we exported 1.1 trillion in the first quarter of this year. But just imagine, 87% of that is crude, bringing us back to where we started. So of all we're doing, 1.1 trillion, but 85% of it is crude. Non-crude is only 12.2%. In the total trade with our top trading partners, 77% of what went to them as exports is crude oil. So again, telling us that we will continue we're always dependent on that crude. So a need to diversify to non-oil export. Only 36% was non-oil. So what's the need for diversifying the economy? One sector leads to another. You have a company producing fertilizer that's an input into farming. The farmers produce the products for the manufacturers. The manufacturers add value and export. So there has to be an intersectorial dependency if we have to diversify the economy. Sorry? Okay. So we have to diversify if we need an intersectorial dependency. Then the need for more sources of export products to reduce importation of goods and services. We can't continue from the analysis that just showed the figures. It showed 73% of our total exports from in the first quarter of this year was strictly on oil. So we need to diversify so that we can produce other things. And then it promotes international trade that will lead to a positive balance of payment position. We heard of recent, I think just yesterday, that the Senate said it was unacceptable for us to have a deficit budget for 2023. If we do not export, we would not have the funding to support the budget. So again, that deficit that the Senate is talking about will continue to remain if we do not diversify our economy. And also, if we don't diversify our economy, the shock we have felt during the COVID when the oil price went negative will have been catastrophic. It will have been worse than what it was. It will have been worse than what it is currently. So we need to diversify so that when the oil has stopped, we'll move to another thing. When the big economies now move into the electric cars, then where we have a shock. So a case for oil export in Nigeria. So the overbearing impact of the oil sector on the economy has exposed the country to external shocks. So anything that happens outside the country affects us. There are countries that are very, very varied in what they export. So whatever happens, it doesn't really bother them. They just switch. Case in point, China. Even with the COVID pandemic, we noticed that China still remained strong. China currently has portions of its country being under lockdown, but it's not affecting its economy because immediately that happened, they switch into other productive sectors. And Nigeria is not the case, and that is why we need to diversify so that whatever happens to the oil price, we can always switch to what it is today. So we have some statistics again of our non-oil exports from 2018 to the first quarter of this year. We noticed that in 2018, 82% of exports was crude. That's when the CBN decided to say, okay. See, we need to take this thing head on. Many administrations, many governments have been talking about diversifying the exports, but not until the intervention started. Before we started recording some slight improvement, there was a decline in 2019 to 77%, and then again a decline in 2020, but in 2021, it increased by 1% to 76%, and then in 2022, that's gone up again to 79% in exports by crude. In all that is being said, why don't we even export? So from discussions that we had, there are challenges to exports. And what are these challenges? Poor industrialization support for export activities. This is a major challenge for exports in Nigeria. Why don't people export from Nigeria? There's undue focus on extractive activities. We go to the primary activity, we go to farming, we go to extract raw material in their localized form. We don't add any value. We pour infrastructure to support the processing and packaging. You see Nigerian products not packaged properly. Case in point, shea butter. Shea butter we know is manufactured, it's produced mainly in Nigeria, even in Niger State. But what happens to it? It is carried and ferried away to Benin Republic, repackaged well, issues also of ineffective supply chain framework, issues of high freight charges due to lack of indigenous vessel owners. We have very few vessels to carry. We hear cases of vessels coming to Nigeria with goods and then they leave Nigeria empty. You know, these are all issues that affect exports in Nigeria. Then the paperwork at the ports, so much paperwork. You get discussions we've had with exporters. They say the issues they have clearing, they have before they send at the ports is just too much. So they would rather not even export. Let them just produce the local things and then sell them here. Manual and cumbersome port processes. I remember we went to a port in Germany. Up even until the trucks in the port have no human intervention. The trucks drive themselves. So the containers, the trucks just come, that's the trailers just come, and then the containers just land on the trucks, and then they are all automated, and they take them out. So you don't see even any single human being. But, I don't know, our case, Very, very manual. Almost everything is manually done. Decaying port infrastructure and congestion at the ports, insufficient warehousing facilities and export processing terminals, poor transportation network resulting in high haulage costs. From China to Lagos is cheaper than your haulage from Lagos to Kano. Am I right or wrong? We've heard of that. So it's easier for you to even freight your goods from China to Lagos than to move your goods from Lagos to Kano. It's, you know, it's, so exporters are like, no, we can't even just do this. We don't even want it. Then absence of developed commodity exchanges. The CBN has gone into this sector. We have the Nigerian Commodity Exchange now. CBN is currently managing it. We're putting the process and management together before we hand it over to the private sector. Lack of a regulated framework for standardization and pricing of produce manufactured goods. What happens is that we notice that our farmers will farm, and during the farming season, and then keep them, storage, just keep them over that and speculatively, and wait till the season of dry before they sell. So we don't even have the pricing, the right price of the products, because the farmers at the tail bottom of it get the least returns. So if they get the least returns, what is that incentive for them to farm a subsequent farming season? Then no export framework for services like human capital, entertainment, and the film industry. There's really no framework for that. Then there's no inadequate fit for purpose financing framework and capacity for export activities. Difficulty in procuring farmlands from state governments to promote backward integration. The CBN has stopped the importation of milk so that we can have our companies, or the companies in Nigeria that work on milk, do a backward integration. The first round of reports that got to us was that they can't even acquire the land. So we have the producers that any foreign producer coming around to say they have to partner with the local guys so that they can get some piece of land before they do the backward integration. All those are cumbersome processes. So what has the central bank done to boost the non-oil exports? After realizing all these negatives on concentrating on just the one product for our export, the central bank says, no, we cannot. Even though our mandate is monetary and price stability to achieve economic growth, you cannot achieve that economic growth on just your monetary policy. And that is why we go into development. That's why we go into interventions. That's the reason why. So when you see our act, you don't clearly see interventions. But we do that because to achieve, you cannot run on price and monetary stability to achieve economic growth only. You need initiatives of the central bank to boost the non-oil sector. We know the majority of them here, but today we'll be talking about the last one there, which is the RT200 FX program. So the RT200 FX program, which is the race to 200 billion FX, is an initiative of the central bank and the bankers committee to attract 200 billion in foreign exchange repatriation exclusively from non-oil. No more crude, no more oil. We want to go into other sectors. So central bank and the bankers committee decided that we need to do something, and we need to make sure we bring in 200 billion in the next 5 years. So 200 billion in 5 years will mean having 40 billion yearly, 3.3 billion monthly in exports before we can achieve this. The RT200 program is anchored on 5 anchors. The first one is the value-adding export facility, then the non-oil commodities expansion facility, the non-oil FX rebate scheme, the dedicated non-oil export terminal, and then biannual non-oil export summit. My discussions before now are what led to the RT200 anchor to address the issues that I have enumerated earlier. Either one of this or all of these anchors will address all. I mentioned that we are into subsistence production, things in their raw form. So the central bank is saying, and the bankers committee are saying, okay, what is the issue? We don't have those factories that would convert the local products to finished or semi-finished products. So in case you have your initiative, in case you have your plan, in case you have your proposal that you want to build factories, or you have the factories and you want to expand them, come over. You get concessionary loans or interventions so that you can expand or build these factories or build these production plants so that you can add value before exporting. Okay, you have built these factories, you have expanded these factories. What if you don't even have the raw material? That's the second part of it. So the central bank is saying, yes, okay, we've agreed that we want to have interventions to as well increase your production capacity. You can increase your production capacity with a concession, and that is where the second anchor comes in. The third anchor, which is the most interesting of all the anchors, where I know we're going to answer a lot of questions from this today. But the third anchor is the non-oil FX rebate scheme. Again, from I export, I repatriate into my export domiciliary account. But we found out that people don't repatriate. And why don't they repatriate? Because you are forced to sell the produce or the proceeds in the I&E window, or you are directed not to use the proceeds for what you want to use it. You want to be able to withdraw these proceeds and take them to, is it Marina in Lagos? I know Zone 4 in Abuja, Marina, right? Broad Street. You want to take it to Broad Street and exchange it for 700 naira. So we realized that, okay, it's a disincentive for that to happen. And then the central bank is saying that, okay, do you know what? Let's encourage you. Even if you don't get that I&E rate, you're not happy with the I&E rate, let's pay you 65 naira extra for every dollar that you import and sell in the I&E window for third-party use. I.e., Richard brings in $100 into Nigeria. I sell it in the I&E window to Chizoba. I'm going to be entitled to 65 naira for each $1 that I sell. However, if I bring $100 into the country and then I want to use it for myself, I want to either import or I want to sell it. I don't even need, I'm not going to, I just want the naira. So if that happens, then for every $1 that I sell, I get 35 naira. The essence of this is just to encourage the exporters so that you don't lose out completely. But we don't want you to go out to that market on the street, because that market on the street is illegal. It's officially at the interbank or the I&E window. But when the World Bank and IMF come into Nigeria, the rate they quote is the rate on that street. So as much as possible, if we can get off demand from that market, from that window, into the official window, the rate. What's the eligibility? The first thing is that the export products must be either finished or semi-finished goods. So you cannot bring goods in their raw form and export. The goods have to be either finished or semi-finished. And the exporters have to ensure that the proceeds are sold in the I&E window. So you cannot bring this proceeds. The items have to be finished or semi-finished, and next it has to be sold in the I&E window. And then there are documentation requirements for it as well. So let's go to the next slide. Is that next? Good. So far, since the commencement of the RT200 program, we say every quarter you will be reimbursed with the proceeds, every quarter, first week of the commencement of a new quarter. So since we started this program, in the first quarter, we witnessed an inflow of 45 million that came, and it was only about nine banks that participated, just about 9 banks. With the success recorded in the first quarter, 23 banks in the second quarter reported on the export rebate. And then you can see that it amounted to $381 million in the second quarter. But guess what? Even in the second quarter, we had a supplementary. More banks said, no, we missed it. Our exporters did not partake. So an additional 28 billion as a supplementary was recorded in the second quarter of the introduction of the program. So you can see the huge leap it means the RT to record in export proceeds by the end of this year. The fourth anchor is a dedicated non-oil export terminal. You remember I mentioned all the challenges. I said one of them was that we had decaying infrastructure at the ports. Again, the Bankers Committee and the Central Bank is saying, okay, state governments, are you interested in the export value chain? If you are on the terminals, come over again, and then we're going to give you oil exports dedicated to exports, conditioning systems, refrigerators, storages at the ports. Come over as state governments because you own the land, and then you're going to have a facility so that we can develop that. Currently, we have one state that has come to say ongoing, there's a syndication of banks that are willing to support that. So we're going to have as well a port that is going to be dedicated for exports. The last anchor is the biannual non-oil export summit. Again, exporters will talk to the agencies in silos. They will speak to the Central Bank on one hand, Nigerian Customs on the other hand, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, the NPA. So they were speaking in silos. The Nigerian Customs will say something, and then they come to CBN, and CBN says, no, it's not. And then they go to their bank, and the bank says no. So we said, okay, do you know what? Let's even have summits where we bring everybody, regulators, all the regulators in this sector, come and stay here. All the exporters, come here. Exporters, say what your problems are. Regulators, please, just give the response. We had the first one that held on June 16th, 2022. Participation was phenomenal. It was very, very good. The participation was good. We collated all the responses. We sent it out to the agencies. There's going to be a follow-up on the agencies to give us how they address the issues that were raised. And then, we had the first quarter, first half year one, and then we're going to have the second. So the second one is going to be on 29th of November. Again, it's going to be in Lagos. So you're all invited to that export summit. So there are other measures that have been put in place to boost, accepting that because there is no collaboration between the CBN and the Nigerian Customs and Nigerian Ports Authority and Nigerian Shippers Council, yes, it has caused so many bottlenecks. So we need to integrate as one body. You want to export, and there's a retinue of agencies that you have to clear with. You clear with the Ministry of Agriculture, you clear with the quarantine, you clear with NOTAP, you clear with, there's just so many. So why don't we have a one-stop shop to address everything? So we as agencies, or we as regulators, we are putting ourselves together, and then we're trying to address this. And when we can address this and roll out the blueprint, then we're going to facilitate exports. So in conclusion, it's very clear that non-export growth is a good strategy for a sustainable economic development. It has played this role in the past and to always play it again, because that's the only way to go. We also realize that, yes, there are serious institutional and sectoral challenges, and then they cross-cut. So there's a need for integration of those sectors. There just has to be policies to address them. I mentioned, if all the regulators meet and address the challenges and churn out policies, it's going to address it. However, whatever magic we do on this, if we as individuals do not take Nigeria as our own country and our investment and our heritage, nothing can ever do and export. Produce, add value, and export. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Add value and export. I also heard diversify, diversify, diversify. Well, I'm pretty optimistic that all of the plans being made by the Treasury. Please, let's put our hands together for him.
Market. And of course, the director in his speech has said a lot about RT200FX. So I'll just say, I think I might just roll over that, and I'll go to our product offering in Access Bank. From the data released by the 3.5% in Q2 2022, and that's largely to the growth we've seen in the non-oil sector. Of course, there's still a lot of room for growth in that sector, but if you compare what has been happening, especially with the effort of the CBN, you see quarter by quarter the improvement of the non-oil sector, and also how it's also increasing. And so because of that, it's also affecting, we all know what's happening in the world, the issues in the US with their inflation going to high levels every time it's released. The last time it was released last week, 8.3, which is the highest in many years. And also, because of that, we have imported inflation in the country, and we've seen inflation on the rising inflation by increasing the monetary policy rates, which is currently at 14%. Also, as the figure released in July 2022, credit to the private sector has increased to 39.87 trillion. The crude oil price has kept on going higher and higher. For the Purchasing Manager Index, of course, this index captures the activities of the manufacturing company to speak to what's happening in the economy activity. So we're also seeing that has dropped in economic activity. Also, for the NAFEX rate, we've seen GDP is currently estimated at $440 billion by the World Bank, and this is estimated to grow by 3.54% in 2022. And of course, this represents 0.05% of the world's GDP. A thriving economy, a thriving export market would help our economy the way it is. The director in his presentation ended by saying that we as Nigerians need to solve our problems. We can't call anyone to solve our problem going up, because demand is more than the supply. So one of the ways that we can bring in supply and ensure that we have a stable economy is by improving and everybody investing and all efforts on the non-oil sector. Inflation in Nigeria, of course, has been on the increase, and that's because most of the things we import, the prices are going up. A major problem we have in Nigeria is imported inflation. Most of the things we buy, the prices are going up. But really, if you're also able to reduce some of the things we buy and produce them here and also export them, then we can get more into the country. So our growing reserves is an indication of the accretion that we've seen from the proceeds from the growing export market. So there's huge potential, huge opportunity for this sector to grow. And of course, we need it as a country to achieve our potentials. The director has spoken about it, has spoken about this next slide in his presentation, but just to speak to the major things that we export in the country, export by product. So he's spoken a lot about that. Our major export is, of course, crude oil, which is around 80%, and the other ones are the other petroleum oil products, manufactured goods, energy goods, solid mineral, raw material, India, Japan, USA, Canada, and North America. Next slide. So the director has done a lot of work in speaking to this and addressing foreign exchange spot market. Whereas if you have your dollars that you want to sell at the I&E market, we're always available for you in Treasury. We'll make sure that we give you the best rate in line with the I&E, because we can't sell. For example, you have dollars in your account and you are not willing to convert them at the moment, but you need Naira. So we could enter into a swap agreement, whereas we give you Naira and we take your dollar, and on the far leg, the Naira consideration. We could also do or go into contract with you on what we call forward purchase contract. For example, you've exported and you're expecting some inflows that are not come. Once you show us the document in Access Bank, delivery of or settlement of the forward contract, that's what we're willing to do, and that will also help you so I don't need to wait for the receivables to come. You can get that money and keep. Once you have that Naira consideration, you can buy another commodity, you can export, and keep adding leverage to improve your activity. The last one is, the last but not the least, is the export receivable. I'll just, please go to the next slide, just to speak to some of the things, some of the transactions that we've done, and recognitions that we have. And I think the most important one that I like to talk about, I'm not sure it's coming out clearly, is the award that we got from a transaction known as the largest USD. Now talked about, there are no flukes. There are things that we have capacity to do, and we do them very well. I'll still have 10 minutes, and I think I've done justice to my 10 minutes. Thank you for listening.
I'm sure, as we all know at Access, there's so much more that we can offer you. It's why our very slogan is more than banking. All right? All right, we'll be taking a
right now, right now. Get up, don't let nobody tell you that you can't. There is greatness inside of you. You're the one that the world is waiting for. Every step you take, we go one day, one day, one day. One day you will make our one day, one day, one day. One day you will make our. Don't let nothing push you down. Stand with the bow. Yes, we believe in you. Yeah. Don't you give up on yourself till the world knows who you are. Keep on shining. Get up, don't let nobody tell you that you can't. There is greatness inside of you. You're the one that the world is waiting for. Every step you take, we go there, 'cause one day you go shine.
Access, more than banking.
Get up right now, right now. Get up, don't let nobody tell you that you can't. There is greatness inside of you. You're the one that the world is waiting for. Every step you take, we go again, 'cause we believe in you. Say one day on shining. Get up, don't let nothing. Get up, don't let nobody tell you that you can't. There is greatness there, 'cause we believe in you. Say one day you go make a one day. One day you go shine.
Access, more than banking.
What? Welcome back, everyone. Please let's take our seats. All right, you're all welcome back from that very short listen to the guys from Treasury, Access Bank, Mr. David, Export Promotion Council, who is represented by Mr. Samuel Oyeyipo, the Regional Coordinator, Southwest NEPC. Let's put our hands together for Mr.
Let me first of all, is unavoidably absent. It looks like a paradox. Is the reason why we are here today to find ways of increasing non-oil export. Is the reason why discussions with importers of foods and feeds in the UK and the border agencies, regulators, on why most of our standards and other things and export trade. Let me go to our vision. Our vision is to make the world a marketplace for Nigerian non-oil products and services. And our mission is to spearhead the diversification of Nigerian economy by expanding and increasing non-oil an exporter. An exporter is one who engages in the trade of goods and services with buyers in a foreign country. We can classify exporters in three aspects. An export agent, we export. Well, previous speakers have mentioned to bigger markets, to gain access to more developed technology and enhance quality of our production. Because when you are to export, you will study the market meets the standard of that market. To reap economies of the clients of the bank who are interested in exporting. What do you need to do? Liability company, cooperative societies, government or non-government organizations can register. We don't register the promoters of the company. You cannot have any business to do with. Taken from our NXPs, sent to the Nigerian Export Promotion Council by Nigeria Customs Service and the inspection agencies. You can see in the area of commodities, manufacture, export-friendly countries. Where are those products going to? From our statistics, we can see that the production base of some of our commodities. Let me give you one example. Cocoa, for example, we have to provide seedlings for farmers so that we can increase production. Currently, we are doing about 300,000 metric tons per annum for cocoa, while Ghana is, one of the initiatives is the STDF Project 172, and the purpose of this is to expand Nigerian export of sesame seed and shea butter through SPS, public and private sector, in 8 states of the country. These are currently projects that are on ground in Shaki, in Oyo State. Anybody that feels Shaki, shea butter to be accepted, and we work with each of the state governments through the Ministry of Commerce and Industry and Ministry of Agriculture to increase production of these products so that each state can have reduced their leather, shoes, and other things in a finished manner that will be able to access the foreign market as comparative advantage. Especially the MSMEs who do not have the capacity to organizations such as NISAT, and NISAT is here to ensure that they able their products to access the foreign markets. About a year ago, on their products for hazard analysis and critical control points, that's HACCP. You will agree with me that if you have HACCP on your product, that product is qualified just to assess the US award and also stem the problem of rejection of Nigerian goods abroad. That is our ultimate aim. Promotion of direct assistance to MSMEs. On Monday, 21st March 2022, the NEPC, in collaboration with a private sector operator, opened the first Nigerian export trade house in Cairo, Egypt, and on 16th, Kenya was opened. The purpose of this is to showcase Nigerian products in those markets. It's similar to what we have in Lagos here, the Chinatown. If you have been there, you see products from China, and from there you can look at it, make your order, and those products will be shipped to the country. So the essence of this is to showcase our organization that can be very heavy in terms of export. But once you have somebody who can deal with in the area of capacity building for AFCFTA, in which 303 exporters benefited in developing your African market course. One are the conditions operating in the countries where they wanted to export to. Domestic export warehouse concept. The domestic export warehouse of goods before transport packaging that is required can be done, and the container can be sealed at the road congestion that we experience currently with our trailers, and also shorten the time by which the products can be processed for export. Essentially, DEW is a structure to assist exporters 15% of their annual export value on fully manufactured, 10% on semi-manufactured, 7.5% on processed intermediate product, and 5% on commodities which can be. And payment of EEG is through the use of export credit certificate. It's not cash. the results we want, what do we want to achieve? We want to ensure that the export court provides support in scaling up production from other agencies like NISAT, working with us on certification of products for the companies, to available trade fairs, provide sponsorship in forms of to take some of the items that they wanted to go with programs, taken care of in terms of wild animals, artifacts, straw hides and skin, and non-processed rubber. All these are currently under export prohibition list of Nigerian Customs Service.
The NEPC. Let's put our hands together, waiting for our panel session.
And we have the representative of the customer on the cost
600 and is there Access Bank of almost 120
set for the economy. You tried,
Yeah.
At least you've highlighted some of the challenges that you face and the desires to ensure that, the turnaround time in terms.
But we always look into these documentary requirements, option and pain in export. You must remove human interference. That is why in our modernization project, which we have done the concession agreement, we're about to start it, the delay these products, it meant for import. Our NXP ourselves, even the CCI, Clean Certificate of Inspection, is also manual and probably maybe in silos. Moving documents, unified custom, both the exporters and all other regulators. This will take care of re-export period manifest. We also intend to have a reinforce that at a point and use a cargo tracking. As soon as we examine, we put the hologram or a CTN, and we can need to automate.
One is a training part to farmers, yes. Second bit which we are doing is, can we give them the infrastructure? What kind of infrastructure those farmers needs? That is something which we are building it over there. Third thing, I was telling Richard over there that this year we have distributed 2 million cocoa high variety seedlings to the farmers. Okay, 2 million. And my plan is like at the industry level, can we do something like 50 million seedlings? Because our cocoa farms are old, 40, 50 years old, which were planted. Can we rehabilitate them again? Then another bit which we are doing is Nigeria's current problem is that small infrastructure. It doesn't need a very big innovation. We need a very small innovation. Can we just make sure our farmer don't clean the beans, don't do the primary processing on the land? Can we give them raised platform? Can we give them some kind of equipment, small equipment, which they can made it on their own in their communities? So those are the things which we are doing. Apart from that, another thing which we are doing, which I just want to highlight over here, is we are saying the youth of that particular community, how can that person be employable in that community? That person doesn't need to come to Lagos or Abuja for the jobs. So we have set up Agro-Light services, where we are training them for certain activities that please go and do the pruning activity, weeding, mulching. These are the basic requirements of any farmer over there. Another thing which we are doing is we are very focused on the women over there. So we are saying women, 25 women come together, build a cooperative. With that, we will give you training, we will give you enough funds at our end, okay, and start like small manufacturing, SME. One example is we are doing collaboration with our one entity. We are saying do a bread making. That's another option. Another thing which we are exploring is, can we do sanitary pad making at the community level? Those are the things which we are innovating at our organization level. Okay, I hope I have answered your question. Yeah.
Yes, you have quite answered the question, and it's good to note that there are a lot of improvements that you are doing to the lives of the different communities that you are working, the youths that you are employing, the women empowerment and all. So I guess this will encourage the farmers to do more and work more, and see that when they work more, they see more benefits, and at the end of the day it becomes much more improvement in the produce that we get as a country at the end of the day. I think the last question I would throw to Richard to say, the exporters, CBN, you've shown us a lot of incentives that you intend to give to exporters. How do they latch in, and what do you think they can do better to get into these schemes, and at the end of the day get more volumes for us as a country generally for our export proceeds? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Osi. Okay, so for the exporters, all that is required is that add value to your products, export and repatriate. Once you can repatriate and sell in the I&E window, we're going to continue to give you whatever encouragement as a bank. Once you repatriate, you're bringing in FX. Our current problem is that the decline in FX has caused a lot of challenge. There's no gathering. As a bank, Tosin, I'm sure a lot of, out of maybe 100 people that will call you, customers, maybe 90 of them are requesting for FX, for
Maybe-
PTA,
maybe
for
95.
medical. 95, right? Okay, 95. So I was even... So if we don't have the FX at the bottom, there's nothing we can do. And it behoves on each and every one of us, as I said earlier, to try and see how we can first produce what we require. Let's eat what we produce. Let's leave all those things that are not required, so that the FX goes to the critical sector of importation of machinery, importation of equipment. Exporters, your requirement is that register with the necessary agencies. We work together. I mentioned earlier that the next summit is coming up sometime in November. Send in your contributions, form in cooperatives, pass in your suggestions, and we can engage all the other regulators, put them together, and come out with what can help. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, panelists. It's been a nice engagement. We've seen now that the customs are open to all forms of infrastructure improvement to help in our export. We've seen that CBN also has come up with all manner of incentives to assist our exporters in terms of doing better and bringing in more products. And then from the customer side too, we've seen that the customers are also doing a lot of initiatives to ensuring that we have more volume of exports to be done. So I thank everyone for listening, and we hope this has been an engaging session for you and some form of enlightenment for everyone that listen into this segment. So we'll go to the question and answers. If we have any question and answer from the floor and online. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, good afternoon. We really appreciate the panelists. But my questions goes to Mr. Singh. You said earlier on that enhancement of cocoa is not so profitable for you before exporting. Can you kindly expatiate on that? Cocoa processing, please. Because
Yes.
my expectation is that I think cocoa should be one of the things that can be enhanced at home through processing. But with that statement, I may be surprised, please.
Yeah. So, as a group, we started off our cocoa processing operations in Nigeria around 20 years back, okay, based out of Akure. And I will just highlight the challenges which are over here. First thing is the energy cost in Nigeria is comparatively higher compared to other other regions. That's one. Second bit is the yield percentage, the waste levels of in the raw cocoa beans is much higher compared to, again, other regions. So we lose around 2% over there. Then another thing is the taxes for the Nigerian products, if you put it in the European market, because the major demand for the butter will be coming from the Europe market. So these are when we say cocoa processing, just to give you idea, there are two products involved over there, by two products. One is a butter, cocoa butter, and then the other one is the cake or a powder. Powder in Nigeria doesn't have so much of captive demand. Okay, so whatever we see in Milo or Bonvita, those are cocoa powder, but it doesn't have much more captive demand in Nigeria, so you have to export it. So now, while exporting, you are having a 4 to 6% of additional taxes for any product which goes into the Europe market. So it gives you a disadvantage of 4 to 6% when it goes over there, right? That's the first. Second thing is we are having a challenge of quality, on the quality level, the pesticide residue. The emerald limits, which I have already put it across, like for the chloropyrifos is a big issue. Metalaxyl used to be a big issue. Aflatoxin is another big issue. Mineral oil is another big issue. So because of that, the value for the Nigerian-based products in the market is relatively low. So if I was doing a processing, we need to go back, give it and do a reprocessing in the Europe market and then sell it to the final customer. So that became a big challenge for us. So, but having said so, we are committed to doing a processing in Nigeria in cocoa. We are looking at favorable environment as well as a key option. Like when you do a processing, you can't do a processing on a very small scale. It doesn't make commercial viability. You do a processing in a 10-15,000 tons. We feel we need to have a 50,000 tons or a capacity kind of processing in Nigeria, which will bring that economy of scales for the processing industry. But right now, is it available for right now? I think that is a big question mark from our end. I hope I have answered your question. Yeah.
Okay, my name is Winston. My question goes to the Deputy Controller General of Customs. When Mr. Singh was talking about the turnaround time in processing export papers, he mentioned that they have to go overseas to test for aflatoxins, which is part of the prerequisite documentation for pre-exports. So I'm surprised that we don't have certified labs that could do those tests here. So I want to know if it's maybe getting some labs certified or maybe partnership with NAFDAC could be part of what the modernization processes that Custom is processing. Because 15 days to wait for the test to come back for perishable goods is pretty long time. Thank you.
Hello? Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. When I was talking about the modernization project, there's what we call e-ports in the modernization project, where all stakeholders, regulators, government agencies will see each other through an application program interface. So if we do this, by the time we achieve close to 60% of this project, the dwell time or the time to waiting, the time you use in documenting or waiting to document will be greatly reduced. So we're already in engagement with all agencies. We have collected their business requirements. We're trying to see how to develop a single meeting point between all of us. Automation is key, and that's where we're trying to utilize what we call destructive technology, scanners, artificial intelligence, and so on, to get, so by the time we do this, we'll be able to see ourselves. We're trying also to do cargo tracking using a GPS, global positioning system, whereby we can monitor movement of goods. So if we can finish this or start this modernization project, it will take care of a lot of our concerns. We hope to get there and get there very soon. Thank you.
Okay, just to add, or specifically to answer your question, of recent, the president signed some document on revamping the Nigerian Commodities Exchange. CBN led that program with all relevant agencies. As part of that program, there are going to be construction of modern testing laboratories at each of the geopolitical zones. There are going to be warehouses that are going to be distributed all over the country. So when you have your products after a harvest, you can go to a warehouse, they get the testing, and then they keep the product in the warehouse while you are issued a warehouse receipt. So as a farmer, I don't have to sell my products when I just harvest them. Once it meets the quality and the standard, I take it to a warehouse that collects everything together. I'm issued a receipt. In case I need funds, we collaborated again with the banks. The banks can discount these receipts, or you use these receipts as collaterals. As I mentioned earlier, the Nigerian Commodities Exchange management has been changed. We have interim management by staff of CBN that are running it to make sure we drive this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think they've done justice to the question, and we believe that we've had quite an interactive session. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to have more engagements in the future. Thank you.
Together, or should we play a little game? Ever heard of my head, my shoulder, my knees? I don't think I want some people to fall off. All right, but we'll play a little game anyway. I'll keep it simple and about myself, right? So I do not intrude. So I'll tell you I'll make two statements, right? And you tell me which one is true and which one is potentially a lie. Is that fine? Are we ready? All right, I'd like to see people volunteer. Who would like to try? So I'll make two statements. Oh, I see someone is pointing. Please, could we get the mic to him? Please help me get the mic to him. Okay. So these are my two. Who's going first? What's your name, sir? Yes, he gave it to me. Please, we'd like to play. What? 1 minute. All right. While we wait 1 minute, who would like to try? Who else would like to try? Or any two persons? Please feel free, as many people as possible. So I'll ask my questions, and you tell me which one is the truth and which one could be a lie. All right. The first statement. I have some military background. And the second statement. I've never left the shores of Nigeria. You might want to, think about what I'm saying. Which one could be a lie and which one could be true? So who wants to try? First statement. What did I say? No, some people cannot answer. Those of you that work with me, please, don't try to answer. I have some military background. Second, I had never left the shores of Nigeria. Let's see. Who wants to try? I see people speaking to themselves. Try, go on.
Well, I want to believe that both of them are true.
Okay. Before I say the answer, let me take another feedback. Who else wants to try before I say the answer? Who else? Someone else try. Okay, we have people here in front, please. I'll take one more person after him, so let me just have three responses.
From your physique, I would say yes, you do have a military background. And because you work in Access Bank, there is no way you've never left the shores of this country.
Okay, well, I didn't ask them to explain, but okay, you tried. So, one more. All right, please, go ahead.
I think the first is not true, and the second is probably true.
Probably. Please, let's give her a round of applause. So she's the one that got it right, actually. See the shock. Well, I mean, Qatar is coming. Feel free to sponsor me out. Feel free. I mean, I'll accept it. Thank you. Let's put our hands together for ourselves, please. So she got the answer correctly. All right, so let's move on to the next phase of today's event. And to help us handle this, we'll be talking about accessing facilities through Nexim. This next speaker is going to talk to us about how you can access facilities through Nexim. And to do this for us will be Mr. Mohammed Awami, the head specialized business department. Please let's put our hands together for him. Let's welcome him. Oh, the person that tried. Well, I know my physique. This one is just the gym. I assure you, it is just the gym. All right, let's put our hands together. Please keep clapping for him as he makes his way. Welcome, sir.
And financial services. So in terms of export credits, facility export, that is export we are providing, not the normal commercial insurance. And then in forms of working capital to meet your operational needs. We also give medium-term to long-term direct lending for project finance transactions. Like I said, one of our focus is eco-fuel among our direct lending facilities. Now, for our interbank facilities, we have the rediscounting and refinancing facility. Now, the three of and then again this year it was increased to 100. And so have the non-oil export stimulation managing. That is for companies that provide services to the oil and gas, international oil and gas companies. So it's mainly to cover against political and payment risk. You know, make sure that you want to import capital items for production of on your business development. It's just to stimulate deliberate funding to that, to the SMEs. Two products to sort of take you access Nexim Bank facilities, which is the crux of my presentation. So once you are a registered company in Nigeria or a corporate society, you can approach Nexim Bank for funding. And then in terms of your incorporation document, that is your MEMAT from O2, if we make it a requirement, that means if you want to expand up and becoming a big thing, we might start on the nature of the transaction. We can sit and look at KYC documents, sign, we justify the... can you move the slide for me, please? It seems to be open and seek partnership opportunities with entrepreneurs and project promoters in identifying and funding viable projects, particularly...
So put limitation into their mind as for small and medium scale enterprises.
Medium enterprises, that the bank decided to set up an entire unit to focus on them transaction. That's why I say For SME, they can and we say, okay, just give us a statement of affairs. Let's just know your financial position. Also has to be verified. You are good to go.
Let's keep clapping. Let's.
The representative of the managing director of Access Bank, on basis, about figures that we have, barely contributed about 23-25% of our export volume, which speaks volume of what we need to do, the kind of work that we need to do. And even going back to the first quarter, if we look at the reports, we'll also see that there was an improvement. So even when we talk about that 23%, we see that there's an figures. I ask myself so many things. I look at our peers, I look at certain countries. So you look at Egypt doing an average of about $7 in a quarter. You look at Iran doing over 30 billion, Annabelle, in Abuja. Exporters meeting these standards, international standards.
We provide international certifications. The first thing we did was to do a
Ministry of Finance, Trade and Investment, Nigerian Customs Service, and other agencies that are involved. So when it is decided that an exporter is worth so much, the NEPC presented it to the Federal Ministry of Finance for payment. And it depends on a lot of things. That's why cash is not being given. What they give is the export credit certificate, which the exporter can use to pay tax, to pay, buy government bonds, and to pay some maybe taxes with the Nigeria Customs Service. So, but in terms of timeliness, it depends on the financial position of the government and what is approved within a period. When we look at the structure of approvals previously, we will see that what is being approved is a lot of money involved. And this had to be built into the budget of the country, and it takes a lot. And also in terms of trying to pay over time, there are backlogs, and new approvals are also being done. So it takes time to process, it takes time to mainstream this into the budget, it takes time to get approval of the National Assembly for this to be released to exporters. So all these are the procedures that makes it somehow, in terms of timeliness, not following what the exporters expected. But as far as I know, the Interministerial Committee are doing very good job in terms of preparing these documents and making them available to exporters as at when due. It's only the process within the economic regulations that makes it a little bit difficult to meet up with the timeliness of the exporters. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I guess that will come, I'm sure a follow-up question will come on that from the audience. I expect that from exporters. I'll go to Nexim. Mr. Awani, in your presentation, or during your presentation, you spoke about the various products that Nexim offers. It's quite interesting to know when you mention things around guarantees and also insurance, and when you talked about the managed funds. But one of the things, I know you spoke about the eligibility, but one of the things that we also want to know is to have an understanding of how you can access these funds. In terms of, is it direct? Do you have to come through a commercial bank or any other instrument? How do you access this funding? And also, if there are any other qualifying criteria apart from what you mentioned in terms of the documentation. Because I see things around, one of the problems that we have with financing exports is also having a credible export credit guarantee, which allows you to now then finance the exports, knowing fully well that in the event that we see the instability around several countries, in the event that payments don't come in, you are sure of getting paid one way or the other. If we look at what China is doing, that's the strength of the Chinese exports, because there's a strong export credit guarantee that is always backing an export. So I don't know if you can talk more on how we can access, how exporters can access it. Is it direct to you, or how do they come in? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ruben. Now,
During my presentation, when I spoke of our financing services, I said you could come directly under our direct lending facility, or you can come through your bank under the interbank facility. Now, let me start with the direct lending. Direct lending, just as the name implies, is Nexim financing the exporter directly. And then the requirements are not much different from what I presented. We just need some due diligence check on you, which we need to do on your incorporation documents. Who are your off-takers? I mean, how stable is the market? You know, we do our own assessment in-house. So for our direct lending, I mean, there are various products under that. I mean, like I said, is it a working capital that you need? Is it equipment finance that you need? Or is it you just want to stockpile for production all year round, or you just want to buy some equipment locally? All those we can do directly. And then for the interbank, which is through your bank, now because our funds are concessionary funds, when you get a loan from a bank, you might want to say, okay, look, I have approached Access Bank for 100 million naira loan to export ginger abroad. Now, once you get that from Access Bank, you can now approach Nexim or approach your bank and say, I want you to apply to Nexim for a rediscounting or a refinancing facility. So maybe Access Bank, for instance, gave it to you at 15% interest rate. Our rate currently is 5% until September before it, end of September before it goes back to 9%. So if you come for us to rediscount or refinance it, we are going to refinance it at that lower rate. So the advantage to you is, first of all, you are able to access funding from Access Bank, and then now you are able to refinance that same funding through Nexim Bank at a lower rate. That is one way. Another way is it doesn't even have to be funded. You just say, look, I need to borrow Nexim, money from Nexim. So it could be under the NESF or under the Export Development Fund. You just go to your bank. Your bank will apply to Nexim on your behalf. Now, when your bank does that, the difference between the direct lending and the interbank is, in the direct lending, you are the obligor. So in case the loan goes bad, you get to repay the loan from other sources. But if it is an interbank facility, the bank becomes the obligor. So the bank would have done its due diligence on you. You may be their existing customer or a new customer. They know you better, so they are willing to take your risk. So for direct lending, you bear the direct risk. For the interbank, the bank bears the risk, with you still bearing the indirect risk. Now, in terms of requirements, I don't think our requirements are much different from any other bank. I mean, credit requirements are basically the same. Who are you? What do you need the money for? Who is going to uptake from you? How am I going to secure the bank? Those are just the requirements. You can have different structures under those basic things, but who are you? It is who is the company. Are you registered? Like I said, you have to be registered in Nigeria to access our facilities. So are you a company or a cooperative society? Who are your shareholders? All those things we need to look at. What has been your financial performance over the years? Are you a profit-making venture? Are you a loss-making venture? What is the trend in your financials? We need to look at all that. What is your borrowing history? We need to do some search on you. We go to the CRMS database and check what has been your credit history over the years. All those things are for us to know you. Once we know you, then what do you need or what do you require? Somebody might say he wants 1 billion naira, but if you look at what he wants to do with it, it might be 2 billion naira that he needs, or it might be 500 million that he needs. So we look at your request and we do our assessment. And based on all the information we put together, we make a recommendation on what we think would be enough for you to execute your contract. The same contract, given different destinations, might require different amount of funding. You know, we look at a lot of things. How long does it take? What is your, cash conversion cycle? So if you are selling to Ghana, for instance, your cash conversion cycle supposedly is supposed to be lower than somebody's, taken to Europe or America. So somebody that needs to, turn around a particular amount of capital 3-4 times for an inter-African trade might just need or might just be able to achieve 2 circles for other destinations. So what he will require will be far lesser because he's able to turn it around more than what somebody thinks. So the requirements vary. No 2 credits are alike. Every credit officer will tell you that. So it depends on the peculiarities of the request. That is what will determine how the structure will be, apart from the general requirements that we have. Now, talking about the guarantees and the insurance, this product, though very, very helpful, somehow, have not been patronized very well. Now, if I'm an exporter, I will want to insure my payments now. I sell to a market, I want to make sure I get paid. And Nexim is saying, okay, come and insure that export transaction. But most exporters see it as an additional cost. So if we say, okay, we need you to pay 1% or 2% of the value of your export as insurance, and we are willing to give you a cover of up to 80%. You know, because we are already, or we are exporting to established markets where payment risks are less. Believe me, on the other side, if they are exporting to Nigeria, they always take a credit insurance against non-payment because I'm sure the Shippers Council and other agencies will tell you how, you know, foreign exporters have been duped by Nigerian companies. But on this side, we just see that these are established markets. Sometimes the transactions are LC-based and other things. So the payment risk is very low, so people are not willing to patronize. Very few transactions have been insured on the export side from Nigeria. And then for the guarantees, yes, we can provide you a cover. The same Access Bank example. You want to collect 100 million from Access Bank to finance your export contract. Access Bank says, go and get me a collateral. Our guarantee can serve as a collateral to you, to Access Bank. That is one way. You want to import sesame cleaning equipment from China, for instance. And they say, give me a collateral. You can come to Nexim and say, look, I need you to give me your guarantee against this import. We have a relationship with Exim China. So Exim China can finance that transaction and then structure it on a deferred payment terms, maybe 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. And then that will ride on the back of our guarantee. So our guarantee can be to our local banks or to our foreign equipment suppliers or even to our counterparties that we have relationships with.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Just a follow-up question for you, Mr. Awani, just leveraging on what you just explained now. So if I look at it, there's also the product that you spoke about, which is letter of credit, leveraging on your relationships with ECAs across the world. So I don't know if you can explain that more so that we can see just the same way that you spoke about the fact that the insurance as is today is not being patronized. I think one of the things also is the fact that people do not understand how it works. And also maybe if we can talk about the letters of credit, leveraging on your relationship with the ACAs and ECAs and how you work with them globally. And also when you were presenting, you also talked about the value addition. One of the things that we know, one of the main impediments to value addition is also the fact that there is the requirement for capital. So I don't know if you can tell us which kind of facilities you have for investments in heavy equipment and what kind of tenors you can do for exporters, still within the same MSME segment that you said is your core area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, LC itself is just a payment instrument, you know. I mean, just like you have open accounts and other forms of payments in international trade. So, but what we do with ECAs basically is, don't forget, every ECA wants to promote the export of their country's product, just like Nexim is trying to promote the export of Nigerian products and services. So let me use India, for instance. We know that India or China, they produce a lot of machineries. And their Exim banks would want to support the export of those machineries. And they know that there are companies in Nigeria that need those machineries, but do not have financing to cover the entire cost. So what we do is, based on the flow, we approach Exim India, for instance, and say, look, we want to apply for a line of credit of $100 million to finance Nigerian companies that want to import at least equipments for their setup. You know, every line of credit comes with its terms and conditions. Some will say the whole transaction has to be 100% from their country. Some will say up to 70%. Some will say up to 80%. So what are you buying? Are you buying a sesame cleaning line from India? If that is what you want, then fine. We can finance it in two ways, like I said. We can give you the money directly, or we can use the line of credit we have from Exim India to finance that transaction. Now, if we use that line, the line will also come with its own terms and conditions. So the interest rate on that line might not be the same interest rate as the one from our own funding. It might be cheaper, it might be higher, depending on how the line was negotiated. So the line is basically to support the export of their capital goods to Nigeria. And then on our own side, now because we are the ones that are utilizing the line, so we become the obligors to the line LOC providers. But for the customer, we also try and secure the transaction. It could be that we'll take part of these assets that we finance as collateral and look at other forms of how to secure the transaction, you know. It all depends on the request and the dynamics. One transaction can be structured in several ways. There is no one way to say one cap fits all, that if this request is like this, it has to be treated like this. You just look at the dynamics. You can structure it whichever way you feel the bank is well secured and the customer is also happy. You know, so it's a balancing act. Now, in terms of facilities, yes, we have specific facilities. I mean, working capital is working capital. Our working capital is basically a short-term facility. So we give it to you from 6 months to 1 year. That is the maximum. And then we tend to put a rollover clause on our working capital. That is for traders, people who just buy and sell commodities. You know, we give you, you can turn it around once or twice or 3 times within the year. But for companies that are into manufacturing, we extend it a little bit for them. So the working capital will be for a maximum period of 2 years, you know, with a rollover condition. Simply because the turnaround cycle or the cash conversion cycle for a trader is lower than that of a manufacturer. You know, there are a lot of things involved in manufacturing of products. So we tend to, extend the working capital tenor for them. Now for equipment financing, of course we know that these equipments have to come from abroad. Or even if you are buying them locally, you need some time to set up the factory and all those things. So we look at all these things based on your project implementation schedule that you have provided. We give you a moratorium for you to set up, test run, and commission until you start, generating cash flows before we start charging repayments. So depending on how long it will take you to install and how long we think your operations or your capacity can take to repay the loan. So it's usually between 3 to 7 years that we do.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we'll go to Mr. Samuel. Talking about NEPC and what you are doing to facilitate the export business. I know one of your key plan or the plan of the current executive management is on the export hub. So I don't know if you can just elucidate more on the export hub and how it is helping to facilitate trade, to facilitate the export trade in Nigeria.
Thank you very much. The export hub, the export trade houses, just like I mentioned in my presentation, we have one in Egypt, we have another one in Togo, then we have another one in Kenya. And just like I mentioned earlier, the purpose is to put our products across over there so that interested importers in those regions can come around to those showrooms and examine those products, ask questions, and place orders, so that through that process, the issue of lack of trust will be taken care of sufficiently, and it makes it easier for them to appreciate what we have within the country. And we don't do this alone, because we know that the private sector is the key engine of the processes. So we work with organized private sector, the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, the National Association of Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. We are working together under what we call Nexport Trade Nigeria Limited to put these processes in place so that the MSMEs who might not have the capacity to personally go to those countries and market their products can have those products displayed at those centers so that they can see it and then from there make contact and begin to service those orders within the country. And we don't just stop like that. We look at the products of individuals that are going there and make sure that we assist them to have those products certified so that it can meet the standards of not just the consumers there, but the regulatory authorities in those countries. So those are the processes put in place to ensure that we publicize what is available within the country. We also complement this with trade fairs and solo exhibitions because you have to be where the world is going and you have to show your products where others are showing theirs so that they can see what is operational in the market environment and also adapt or change whatever is required within their products to suit those markets. So all these are processes by which we ensure that we show what we have to the outside world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. Thank you for the explanation. Then just a follow-up question. On an interesting industry in Nigeria, which has been growing significantly, but I don't think we've been getting the value that we need, which is basically the entertainment industry. So I don't know if you can just tell us how NEPC is working, because I think it still falls within the purview of what you are looking at. So I don't know what you are doing to ensure that we get full value for the kind of exports that we do in that industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As you know, the entertainment industry is a booming industry within the country and known in many of the West African countries themselves. What I would say is that the NEPC some years back took a bold step and took some artists to Kenya to showcase what they have, and that process was a very successful one. But we realized that there is need to put in place a strategy. It's not just going there and showing the products that matters. How do we sustain it? What are the market strategy that's supposed to be put in place so that the process can be continuous? So we came back and then started developing the services strategy in collaboration with Commonwealth Secretariat London, which was done but not concluded yet, because we still want to take cognizance of other sectors within the services sector so that we can have a broad-based strategy to take care of all the interests concerned. So we are still working with them, and I believe that by the time this strategy is fully in place, we'll be able to take them step by step and sector by sector and also expose them to the international market. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Samuel. Okay, Ms. Annabelle, very interesting area. Back to you again with standards, especially when we were discussing while we were sitting there. We talked about rejections. And so I need you to just explain to us what you are doing in terms of capacity building, in terms of engagement on standards, not just certifications, but ensuring that Nigerian exports meet standards, meet the required standards that will allow us conquer the world. Because truly, I mean, sitting down and talking about the beans that we're talking about, which has been, I mean, it's been under ban or so since 2016.
2016, yeah.
2016. We also know that the Nigerian beans is actually in hot demand in real terms, but because of certain standards. So I don't know what you are doing in terms of capacity building and also collaborations. What level of collaborations are you doing today to ensure that we meet up with these standards?
Thank you very much. Okay, so in terms of capacity building, what we have done, because as NISAT in partnership with ECOSAT owns the accreditation, but we carry out the audit and inspection on their behalf. We are not able to do any form of capacity building because that would amount to conflict of interest. But what we have done is to set up a new company called NISAT Expert Consulting Limited that trains people, exporters, people within the value chain on various compliance to various international standards. We are working with NEPC. We train processors for HACCP, for ISO 22000. We are working with GIZ, training people on organic, and also training people on food safety. What we've also tried to do is even to work with associations, farmer associations, where we are training them on good agricultural practice standard, on organic standard according to the EU, the USDA. We are training others, for instance, the people in the cocoa industry on fair trade, because we understand that it's important for them to first understand what the standards are before they begin to implement the standards. We've even gone further to create a team that ensures compliance to standards. So if we have trained you, we also follow you up to ensure that you are complying with the standard before we come in to do the actual audit and inspection and issue certificates. That's part of what we are doing. But we also realize that in Nigeria, people don't want to really comply with standards because the first question is, what is in it for us? So part of what we have now gone an extra mile to do is to get the market. So the market becomes an incentive for people to want to comply with the standards. So even as we try as much as possible to train the farmers, we bring in programs and we bring in things that serve as incentive for the farmers to want to comply. And then even for the exporters and the people within the supply chain, we also ensure that either through market linkage or other activities that will bring some sort of incentive to them. So that becomes an incentive for them to want to comply. We know that there has been a lot of issues of rejection of Nigerian products because of lack of compliance to standards. For instance, just last month, there was a lot of rejection, I think about 3 containers of product of sesame from one of the big exporters for Samolina. We also look at these things and find out what is the best approach in terms of capacity building, because we also realize that it's either coming from primary production or post-harvest handling, and we try to create programs that we train people to ensure that we are able to mitigate those risks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just a follow-up, how would an exporter sitting here take advantage or leverage on this, your various intervention? I mean, which level of engagement? Is it direct or through, must they come through agencies or they can come directly to NISAT?
Okay, so so we work both ways. You can come through the agencies that we work with, like Nigerian Export Promotion Council, or you can also come directly to us. And our offices are there to, and our people are also there to help, because one of our passion is actually to ensure that Nigerian products get into the supermarket. So I want to be able to go to the US and get into a supermarket and see fresh fruits coming from Nigeria. There is nothing stopping our banana from going to the UK or going to the UAE. UAE imports up to, I think, about over $6 billion worth of banana. And guess what is coming from the US? And then the question is it's just 6 hours from here to Dubai. Why are we not exporting our banana to that place? Why are we not exporting our bananas to even the UK? And banana from Ghana is going to the UK as fair trade. So for me, I am looking at when we'll be able to not just export products, semi-processed products, but even finished products that we'll be able to sell in supermarkets and make a lot of profit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Annabelle. Okay, just one final question for Mr. Samuel before we go to the audience. Looking at NEPC and the mandate that you have, I don't know, what are you doing? We see the Hydra-headed issues around, just like when Richard was presenting and he spoke about the challenges with the multiple agencies and all of that. What is NEPC doing in terms of getting agencies to align and work together to ensure that export is seamless, because the issue around the challenges around export, there are challenges around the logistics with export, and all of that is something that I think, just like he said, it's cheaper to move your goods from China to Nigeria than move your goods from Lagos to Kano and all of that. And we also know that when we engage exporters, they tell you things around their containers having to stay at the ports for a long time, and that's why the central bank is looking at having dedicated export terminals and all of that. But what are you doing? What's your agency doing around having all these agencies that supervise or regulate export, having to align and ensure that it's seamless? It's a seamless process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me first say this, that the Nigerian Export Promotion Council is not a regulatory agency. We only advocate on behalf of exporters. So our job is to interface with the various agencies and talk to them on what is the best way to take care of the interests of our exporters. For example, when you look at the trade procedures, it was mentioned this morning that the documentations are so much that sometimes the exporters do not feel happy with the processes. So the Nigerian Export Promotion Council is the Secretariat for Nigerian Committee on Trade Procedures, which house several agencies that are involved in procedures and documentation. And the Trade and Exchange Department of CBN is also involved in this. And what we do there is to look at those documents and try to see ways by which we can shorten it, by which we can collapse it and maybe reduce those documentation processes. This is an ongoing process, and I believe that the committee will continually look at those processes, those documentations, and edge out those ones that are not necessary or those that are being duplicated. So it's a continuous process, and I believe that as time goes on, we'll surely get there. And with all the processes the Nigerian Customs Service is also putting in place to shorten those documentation procedures and processes, we'll definitely achieve something better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So, Mr. Awani, I would just going back to a presentation. I listened to the MD of Nexim at the summit in Abuja, and he spoke about all the other areas of intervention and in terms of what you do apart from just funding and finance. I think he spoke about capacity building and all of the kind of support. So I don't know if you can also let us in on all the various interventionist programs that the Nigerian Export-Import Bank, which is Nexim, is currently doing to drive exports in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't want you to think we are just finance. We actually do a lot of capacity building. In fact, if you look at the export value chain, Nexim is at the tail end. It's because it is when you want to export that you come to us. When you are looking for seeds to plant, when you want to take care of your farm, cultivating, storage, we are not in that chain. But we realize that the chain is broken in some parts and needs to be fixed. So we are working with partners along the export value chain. Even NISAT, we are recently engaging to see how we can form a partnership with them. With NEPC, a lot of the trade fairs he's talking about is done jointly with Nexim. In fact, the last intra-African trade fair was, Nigeria's delegation was jointly financed by Nexim and NEPC. So we do a lot of support to the exporters. And the Nexport Trade is talking about also, Nexim is a shareholder in that company. So we try to establish export houses in other African countries to showcase Nigerian goods and services. We also have an online academy, which is the Nigerian Export Academy that we recently launched, which is free, and you just register and participate. You take online courses to build your capacity in exports and other sectors. In fact, A to Z of export is what is being provided there. So you just go to the Nigerian Export Academy, you register freely, and then you start taking courses. There are also some tutorial videos from industry experts which you can watch and build your capacity. Now, that is what we are doing for capacity. But in terms of also logistics, we realize that there are also some issues surrounding logistics, not road transport, but sea transport, you know. If we would truly want to support the ECOWAS focus that I said we have, that means we need to also take care of the logistics challenge. You all know it is faster to move your goods from here to Europe than from here to Ghana. So what we did is we set up an SPV, which we call the Sea Link Promotional Company, which is supposed to be a shipping line that will link all the West African, Nigeria to all the West African seaports. Now, because of the scope or the reception it's received, even the Central African countries have applied to be included in the route. So we are doing a lot of work just outside funding, you know, in terms of capacity building, in terms of infrastructure support and other things to make sure that we truly develop exports in Nigeria. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the last part of your presentation was very interesting because that's one of major issues that we see where some exporters tell you that their products have to live here. They are going to some part of West Africa, but they have to go to Europe because of the vessel. And they go to Europe and then come back, you know, and all. So if we have something like that going around the West African coast, that's a very significant development that we think will enhance trade. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. I will just entertain about 2 questions from the audience so that we don't take too much of our time. I think we've taken too much of the time already. So we'll just entertain 2 questions from the audience, or maybe 3, and that'll be it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. Please, good afternoon again. Please, my question goes to Panabere. In the course of your contribution, you try to differentiate between 2 standards, mandatory standard and voluntary ones. I won't mind if you can expatiate a bit on the voluntary one. Hello? Hello? Please, I won't mind if you can try to expatiate on the voluntary standards you mentioned. In addition to that, you talk about traceability along the chain of sourcing products for exports. And for the quality to be enhanced, to get better premium price outside there, you talk about traceability. On a practical note, how easy is this traceability? Because my father used to be a cocoa merchant, and I am aware then that before he can get a truckload of cocoa beans, he may need to get all these products from more than 500 farmers. And these products will move from him to the exporters. So when you are not talking about it now, I look back, I cannot really fathom how it could have been easy for my father to have gone down to trace the source of all these cocoa products. Please, I wouldn't know, on a practical note, how do you think this can be achieved by the merchant and the exporter?
Okay, so do we take all the questions first? Okay, so Ms. Annabelle, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So the distinction between voluntary standard and mandatory standard. For mandatory standard, there are basic country requirements. So I'll take an instance. There is something called the SPS standard, sanitary and phytosanitary standard. Every country have their sanitary and phytosanitary standard. So for all the countries that have been that are signatories to the WTO agreement, it states that if you want to export your product into their country, you must have, for instance, phytosanitary certificate from quarantine. You must have, for instance, country of origin certificate. All those are mandatory standards. The other standard, for instance, if you want to export your product to the US or the EU as organic, they have their regulation, which is called the EU. For instance, for the EU, it's called the EU Organic Regulation. For the US, it's called the United States Department of Agriculture National Organic Program of the United States. If you want to export your product and you want to put organic on it, then it becomes mandatory that you must comply with that regulation. That is for mandatory standards. And if, for instance, you want to export processed products to the US, initially, if you are registered with FDA, it was sufficient for you to export your semi-finished product or finished product, processed product into the US. But I think 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the FDA and the USDA merged their acts to what is now called the FMS, the Foreign Supply, no, so it's called the, I've lost this thing of what it's called, but within that program, okay, it's called the Food Safety Modernization Act. Within the Food Safety Modernization Act is what the program called the Foreign Suppliers Verification Program that mandates everybody who is exporting to the US to conform with a minimum food safety standard, which is either HACCP. HACCP is the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point Standard, or ISO 22000 standard. Now that also has now become a mandatory standard. Mandatory standard is what you must comply with if you want to export into those countries. However, for voluntary standards, these are private standards that people came together. For instance, for Global Gap, there is a regional standard for the EU for fresh fruits, vegetable, livestock, and aquaculture. But a group of people, chain stores, supermarkets came together and said, look, because we want to increase our market share, let us now have a standard that is a bit stricter than the regional standard. And they named it Global Good Agricultural Practice Standard. And after a while, it gained recognition, and then consumers now look out for it. So if you want to export and you want to gain additional premium on your product to the EU, you want to comply with the Global Good Agricultural Practice Standard. But it's not a mandatory standard, it's a voluntary standard. The same thing with fair trade. Fair trade is an ethical standard that just ensures that there is a fair value. The fair value of the product, the fair value of that particular product goes down all the way to the people at the primary level. And all these voluntary standards are actually market driven, and they are attached to different products. So for instance, for fair trade, you'll be looking at cocoa, hibiscus, cashew, ginger, for instance. So if you want to, for voluntary standard, you have to look at the market that you want to get into, look at the standard that is the consumers that drive voluntary standards. So voluntary standards are standards that, yes, they are not mandatory, but the consumers are looking out for those standards and they are ready to pay premium if you comply with those standards. And the standard for voluntary standards, a third-party conformity assessment and certification body that has been accredited by those regulators to certify that you have complied must certify, and they must issue you a certificate as proof of compliance. So that, and for all of these voluntary standards, traceability is the bedrock. Traceability is the foundation for all of these voluntary standards. Now, coming to the issue of the traceability that you talked about, I will use the same instance that you used. Your father, who was a cocoa trader and buying from 500 farmers, what he needs to do, or what he needed to do, was to have the names of those 500 cocoa farmers that he's buying from, the location where they are, the quantity he bought from them, so that when he's now selling to an exporter, he's able to pass on that same information to the exporter, and the exporter will now be able to say, okay, I bought it from Mr. A. Mr. A, now your father is now the Mr. A. Mr. A bought it from 500 farmers in, for instance, Ondo State. And now as an exporter, I'm sending it to Netherlands. There will be some sort of, so it can be a barcode that just a simple documentation that tells the story. So traceability is being able to tell the story of where the product is coming from. So for practicability's sake, if you want to be able to sell your product, that is why we encourage that people should begin to have supply chain structures. It's only in Nigeria that people come and they decide, oh, we want to export tomorrow. They don't know the farmers or the people where their product is coming from. If there is a problem tomorrow and they call you, Mr. A, and say, oh, this sesame that you sent to Europe has a problem, you will not even know where it's coming from. You will not know the batch of sesame that you bought that had the issue, that you would now decide, you know what, let me not buy from these people again. Let me continue to buy from 1 and 2, because if I buy from 1 and 2, I will not have problem. What we do is that we go to the local market, we mop up everything that we see based on the ones that give us cheap pricing. And whether it's good or not, we don't know. We do random sampling and take to the lab. The lab says, oh, everything is okay. We export, and at the end of the day, we realize that we took the good ones, mixed it with the ones that were not very good, and at the end of the day, we have bad product. So for traceability, every exporter should have targeted products that they want to export, and then have supply chain, even if it's 1, 2, 3, that you are working with, so that you are able to trace where you are coming from. So whether you are an exporter, you are a broker, even exporters should now begin to insist that brokers have some sort of traceability. They need to know where the products that they are buying is coming from, not buying from the open market, especially if it's export bound. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just take this last question from the online audience. From Bashiru Afolabi, he would like to know, at what stage of value addition does a product qualify for RT200? At what stage of value addition does a product qualify for RT200?
Okay, so I guess we'll leave that to Richard to address. Well, I know that in terms of products, one of the things that we take from the central bank in itself is the fact that the classification is actually under, I think is under the NEPC classification of products, which classifies products into semi-finished, finished, and raw products. So if you want to check where your product falls in, you can just check the NEPC site. But then I'm sure clarification, I don't know if Richard wants to add anything.
Very fine. You answered it correctly, because it's the NEPC's responsibility to do that and not the CBN. So it's based on their classification.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening. In closing, I will say that if nothing, at least we're taking several things from what they've said, one of which is the Export Academy. If nothing, I'll take that one. Even at your leisure, you can go in and learn 1 or 2 things and see the kind of opportunities that are available. And also, from what we hear, in terms of the voluntary standards, I guess, those, for me, those are very key, because truly at the end of the day, it's value that you get. One of the things yesterday, looking at the news yesterday, I think there was a seminar also on cashew, and the assumption from the result from the seminar was that we have the capacity to do about $4 billion in cashew export on an annual basis. Today we're doing about 10% of it. So if nothing, let's take it up and try to challenge ourselves to drive it. We can actually conquer the world. With 34 million hectares of arable land, there's nothing really that we can't produce and we can't export. Let's start from today and drive export so that we can conquer the world. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Wow, what a brilliant session. Please, let's put our hands together for them once again. Thank you so much. Highly informative. Thank you for all of the amazing data that you put out there. All right, so we've come to the end, right? I'm sure some of us, don't worry, please. Access has got you fully covered. Don't be in a hurry to leave. So for our closing remark for the afternoon, let's welcome Dakpo Ajuwon, Sector Head, Telecoms and Power Access Bank. Let's put our hands together for him, please.
Thank you very much. I want to believe all of us, we have a nice time. Thank you for everyone that has joined us online. Thank you for those that are here physically. I want to say a very big thank you to all our invited guests from CBN, from Nigerian Custom, from NEPC, from NISAT Limited and Nexim. And for all our customers that graced this occasion, I want to say a very big thank you. Thank you for taking time to come to this event. And for those online, we say a very big thank you. And I know that after this session, after this day, we will take all the learnings that we've shared on this platform to our various businesses as we continue to grow the export earnings of the Nigerian economy. Thank you very much, and we want to say thank you too as you go and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the end. Feel free, you can take photos, and we also have reserved some lunch out there for you, so please go right there and you'll be served well. Once again, thank you and God bless you. Thank you all for coming. Please, we would like you all to just settle. You can go right out there through the first door so you can take your meal and come back in, sit down and have a wonderful lunch. All right? Please, we'll take them table by table. After the first row, the next row, and the last row. Thank you very much.